Hello everybody, it's Mr. Ingman here from Barnsley Music Service. Welcome to the third part of the intervals videos. What we learned in the last video was that we can now use a word as well as a number to describe an interval. So there you can see a major third, C2E is a major third, D2A is a perfect fifth. We learned that we used major or perfect if the highest of the two notes in the interval was in the key or the scale of the lowest note. We learned that we used major if it was a second, a third, a sixth or a seventh, the size of the interval. If it was a unison, a fourth, a fifth or an octave, an eighth, we were using perfect. What we're going to learn about in this video is that sometimes the highest of the two notes in an interval is not in the key or the scale of the lowest note. That means that the interval is not major or perfect. We'll have a look in a minute about what some of these words mean, but you can see in the table we've got some extra words there like augmented and minor and diminished, and also we're going to have awareness about the difference between intervals that would normally be perfect or normally major, because you can see in the green column there's no minor for intervals that were perfect. We'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. We're looking now at the C to the E, that interval of a third. We learnt in the last video that was a major third because the E, the highest note in the interval, was in the key of the lowest note in C major. It was the third note. What we're looking at now is a minor third, C to E flat. The reason that's a minor third, the major third was C to E because we're working in C major. That's the major key of the lowest note. E is the third note of C major. Making that a flat means it's half a step lower. Because the E flat is half a step lower than an E, the interval is half a step smaller. So going from major to minor, that's why that's a minor third. Now the interval has got half a step smaller again because we've got a C to an E double flat. That is why that is a diminished third. Now you can see C to E sharp. That means that the interval has got bigger by half a step. If you think that C to E is the major third, making the E and E sharp has stretched that distance between the lower note and the higher note by another half step, so it's bigger. That's why that is an augmented third. This aspect of intervals is a really difficult concept to understand, which is why I'm using some colours there and some arrows on the piano keyboard. You can see from C, the lowest note, the augmented third is the biggest. It's a little bit of a confusing one as well because it looks like the arrow's going from the C to the F. Because E and F, there's no black note in the middle, E sharp is the note F. It doesn't mean that that interval is a fourth because it's still C to E of some kind. This is a funny little rule with intervals in music theory. C to E sharp is not a perfect fourth. C to F is a perfect fourth and sounds exactly the same. You've got to go on the number and the distance. C, D, E gives you a third. Doesn't matter what type of E it is, it's still a third. And then on the other side of the screen, the smallest interval, the diminished third, again looks like it could be a second because E double flat is the same note, the enharmonic equivalent of a D, but it's not a major second. We're going purely off the number. Here's another example, going back to our perfect fifth. We're always thinking in the major key of the lowest note, so D to A is a perfect fifth because A is the fifth note of D major. Now on the left of the screen, the A is becoming A flat, so that means that it's half a step lower, so the interval is half a step smaller. We've gone from a perfect fifth to a diminished fifth. Really important rule. There's a gap there that I've left on the table, on the chart deliberately. There is no minor between perfect and diminished when you're dealing with unisons, fourths, fifths and octaves. On the right of the screen there, the D to the A sharp, that means the interval has got bigger because the A sharp is half a step higher, so the interval is half a step bigger. So we've gone from the perfect D to A to the augmented D to A sharp. Again, you might find it useful to have a little bit of colour coding and a little bit of perspective shown of the size of the interval on the piano keyboard there. I always get people to think about the major and the perfect intervals as being normal intervals. You're always thinking in the major key of the lowest note. So D to A is your perfect fifth. you can see that the augmented fifth with the yellow arrow is bigger. You can see that the diminished fifth with the red arrow is smaller. Look out for the Intervals Part 3 worksheet on the Music Hub website. Have a go at that. And there's only one more video in this series, so look out for Intervals Part 4. Thanks very much for watching.